Alright, it's Mr. A again with directions for our next assignment here. We'll once again be working in groups. We're creating informational posters. That information we're going to share once everything is put together. Similar to the last one, except the last assignment with oceans dealt with characteristics of ocean water. This time we're basically dealing with characteristics of ocean currents. The first half of the currents that we're going to discuss are those that are found on the surface, and the second half of the currents that we're going to discuss are those that are found deep inside the ocean. So let's just take a look at the objective. Okay, so the objective for this particular assignment here is students will be able to explain the various characteristics of both surface and deep ocean currents. Alright, so if you notice, there's colored pencils on the table. You see crayons, there's a pencil there. You're going to need all these items here to complete the assignment. We don't want to use a pen because, again, if you use pen, can't erase it. We're going to need a textbook. All the information will be in a textbook. If you look over to the right-hand side, you'll see that there are 6 tasks. So that means we'll be working groups of 2 again. And there'll be at least 2 poster boards per student. Again, it's depending on the size of the class, but I'm hopeful that everyone will be assigned 2 of the slips each, so that if one group does not complete all the answers, at least I have another group to depend on, so that when we get to the end, we can all have the correct answers. Okay, so let's first start with the first assignment, which is surface currents. I'm going to zoom in just to kind of focus a little bit here. See what has to be completed. I'm going to grab the first slip. Just going to maybe bring it up to the camera. Actually, I think I'm going to have to zoom out. Nah, not necessarily. Okay, we're going to keep it here. Okay, so if this is your slip right now, you should be paying attention and taking notes. So there are several things you're going to work on. Again, you're going to bullet note the information on scrap paper or somewhere in your notebook. Share the information with your partner. Once you have a rough draft of it, then you are going to rewrite the information on your poster board. So the first set of bullet notes is you're going to define what a surface current is, and then you are going to explain how these surface currents are powered. Second, it says here, name 2 types of surface currents. Alright, now it also says here you are going to draw a map. I'm going to give you the map, and on that map you are going to color it, and you are going to describe the 2 types of currents. Unlike the last assignment, this particular one, I managed to give you the page number where you are going to find the answers and the paragraphs. So if you go to page 518, alright, paragraph number 2 and paragraph number 3, this is where you're going to find all your information. Okay. Additionally, at the bottom or on the side, however you decide to put your or draw your poster board, you're going to name and draw 3 things that surface currents carry. Alright, so let's take a look at the poster board so we have an idea what has to be completed. Alright, so there's your title. And then if you take a look on the left-hand side, you will see the map that I'm going to give you. And then you will see also at the bottom in the South Atlantic Ocean, the students that worked on this poster board included their 2 types of surface currents. Yes, there are 2 names. I'm not sure if you can actually see the names, but the color of the arrows indicate the type of surface currents that I'm asking you to explain on your poster board. On the right-hand side, you'll see bulleted notes explaining the information that was on your slip. On the bottom half of the poster, you will see the 3 things that surface currents carry. I'm not going to kind of focus in completely into the poster board. I want you to kind of look up the answers. I don't want to make it too simple, but at least this is a model of what your poster board should look like. Okay, moving on to the next. Alright, just want to go back one step And I'm going to just kind of bring my textbook into focus, because a lot of you, when you draw or color in your maps and you need to include arrows and names of currents, just want to kind of show you the textbook page. Alright, this is the map you are going to utilize to complete your maps, and the textbook page is on 518. So if you notice, there are two colors. The blue obviously stands for a cold current, and the red indicates a warm current. And again, all the currents are labeled. So you just have to determine which of these currents you are going to use for your poster boards. Doesn't mean that every poster board will have a red and a blue or a named current, but at least that's the page and that's the map you are going to refer to. Okay, so the next assignment here is what affects surface currents. Okay, that's going to be the title of your poster board. If you notice at the very top of the board, you'll see it there. All right, so that's your first bullet note. So when you go to page 519, as you see here, paragraphs 1 and 2, this is where you're going to get all your information. So again, your first bullet note is what affects surface currents. Your second bullet note is to define the Coriolis effect. And then if you take a look, let me kind of stretch my arms out a little bit to try to get that all in the picture. All right, it says here, in what direction does the surface current cause surface currents to move in the northern hemisphere and in the southern hemisphere? You could make this one bullet note, or you can make this two. We need to know the direction at which these surface currents move due to the Coriolis effect. Again, it says draw a map. We are not going to draw a map. I'm going to give you the map. The thing that you are going to have to work on, basically, if we move this here, if you take a look at the map, is to show direction. You will notice that there are two arrows on the map, and the arrows, even though it's a red arrow, for this particular poster board, it doesn't need to be red, it doesn't need to be blue, because the question is not asking you to determine the temperature of the current. It's not asking you to name a current. It's basically just asking for direction. So when you read the information again on page 519, you should find somewhere in the reading between paragraphs 1 and 2, what direction do surface currents in the northern hemisphere, in what direction do they move, and in what direction do surface currents in the southern hemisphere move. All right. Let me get the next assignment. Okay, again, we're still dealing with surface currents. This is the last assignment. One of the surface currents most common to us here in the state of New Jersey, along the Jersey Shore, is the Gulf Stream. It is a warm water current. All right, so it might seem like a lot of information, but really it's more background information to help you answer the questions. So your poster board, although it says the Gulf Stream, you could use that as the title for your poster board, or the question that you see here where it says who utilized the Gulf Stream current. That should be more the correct title for your poster board. So bullet number 1, who utilized the Gulf Stream current to go from America to England? That information will be found on page 519, third paragraph. Next bullet note, where do cold currents move towards and where do warm currents move towards? Okay, so you can make that second piece of information either one bullet note or two bullet notes. Next, it says draw a map. Once again, you are not going to draw a map. I'm going to give you a map. All right, and if you follow along, after that it says here color code the currents with red for warm and blue for cold. It says to use arrows for directions. So for this particular one, you are definitely telling me what direction these currents are moving. Additionally, it says here, name a cold current and name a warm current. So you are going to need the names of these two particular currents. Again, you're going to have to refer back to page 518 for that information. But for more information to complete your poster board, if you look at the very bottom of the slip here, you'll see page 520, paragraphs 2 and 3, and then the sample map where you can get the two currents necessary to complete this assignment is on page 518. Okay, so let you take a look there at the map. You will notice that the students from last year that worked on this poster board basically used a warm and a cold current, and they were both from the South Pacific. They're from the, I'm sorry, that's not the South Pacific, that's the Southern Atlantic Ocean. So they chose two currents from the Southern Hemisphere. Now, you do not need to use the same currents. You can use any warm and cold current globally. It's up to you. Just take a look at the map on page 518, and then you decide with your partner which currents you are going to use. And if you notice, everything is colored in. If you take a look at the letters, all the letters are traced over. Basically the same directions as the last assignment. Moving on. Okay, so we've just moved away from discussing currents that are on the surface of the oceans. Now we are going to focus on those currents that are found deep below the surface. And the first current, as you'll see the title of that poster board, is what is a density current? In fact, a density current is more than likely one of your vocabulary terms. So if you need to know the answer to that, all you need to do is look in your notes. Let's take a look at the slip. Okay, this group, take a look at your slips in front of you. If it matches this one on the screen, this is you. All right, so once again, what is a density current? That is bullet number 1. Name 2 reasons why density currents occur. So you can make that 1 bullet note, or you can make that 2 bullet notes. Next, name two places where density currents begin and resurface. 2 places. So once again, you can make that 1 bullet note, or you can make that 2 bullet notes. It does say draw a map. We're not going to draw again. I'm going to give you the map, but you're once again going to use arrows and indicate direction. And there's a side note there where it says blue for cold and red for warm. All your information can be found on page 521, paragraphs 2, 3, and 4, and also on page 522, paragraphs 1 and 2. The one thing you don't want to do is lose this slip, because the slip is giving you the information as to where to find the answers. Okay, so let's take a look at the poster board. I think most important to take note are the 2 arrows. If you notice the arrow in the northern hemisphere, it is showing you that it is moving that particular deep, or that particular density current is moving from the North Pole, right, or the northern area of the northern hemisphere towards the equator. And as that arrow progresses, or as that current progresses towards the equator, there's a change in color. It starts out cold because where it begins it's cold, but where it ends it's nice and warm and toasty. That's near the equator. So you have to show a color change. So when you draw these 2 arrows, you're going to go from blue to red. Same thing in the southern hemisphere. If you notice near the South Pole, there's an arrow that's working its way northward towards the equator. It begins with a blue color and ends in a red. All right, and then everything else, those are all your bullet notes. Again, your poster board does not need to look like this one. This is what my students chose to do last year. Again, you just have to be creative. This was their creative design. Moving on. Okay, so our next poster board here is has to do with upwellings. Okay, an upwelling is a deep ocean current as well. Basically what it does, it brings cold water from deep down below up to the surface. So let's take a look at the slip. Alright, so it says here, what is an upwelling? Bullet number 1. Upwelling, I believe, is also a vocabulary term. So all you need to do is either look in your notebook or just take a look at the back of your textbook for the definition. The next bullet note here is, how is an upwelling important to people? That's bullet number 2. Next, it says, name some places where upwellings occur. I believe the textbook is going to give you 2 locations. So you can answer that last bullet note or that last piece of information as 1 bullet note, or you can separate it as 2. Next, it says here to draw a 3D model. I will explain to you how to deal with the 3D model. It's actually in your textbook. Once again, it's saying at the bottom of the slip here to use arrows. The arrows are indicating the flow of the current, and it's also indicating the temperature of the current. So if you notice, I've also included here blue for cold and red for warm. Your information for this particular poster board is on page 521, first paragraph. Okay, so I'm going to leave the camera there. I'm going to kind of turn my page to show you the picture that you see on the poster board is the same picture that's in the textbook. So if this is your group, this is what you are responsible for. You're going to draw this model as best as possible. If you notice the upwelling in the front right hand corner, it kind of curves upwards. It goes from the bottom of the ocean up to the surface. It is blue in color because it is cold. Be sure to label that arrow upwelling. If you see, take a notice at the red arrow, it's moving kind of to the left. It's red in color because it is a warm current. And it also says southerly wind. All right, I think what that arrow is indicating is the movement of the wind. Next, if you take a look at the top portion of the 3D model, you'll notice these 3 yellow bluish arrows. It's giving you water movement. All right, make sure you label it as water movement. All of this is important so that we understand how upwellings occur. Again, this is your 3D model. I'm going to kind of lower my textbook so that you can see how close to the model in the textbook as is on the poster. And then again, I know we're not all Pablo Picassos here, so just try your best. You're not being graded on how well you can draw, but the most important thing is that you label and you draw your arrows so that the information on the poster board is clear. Okay, last but not least, I believe, Mediterranean Intermediate. Okay, it looks like a lot of information. It is, but it isn't. It's all in the textbook. Once again, we're not making this information up. This again is another 3D model which I will show you in the textbook what it looks like, and we will compare it to the poster board. But first I want to go over the directions. Okay, so take a look at your slip again. These are your specific directions. So the poster board title again is the Mediterranean Intermediate, and it says what causes the Mediterranean Intermediate water to form and where does it go. So if you look at the right hand side, there's 1, 2, 3, about 4 bullet notes with information. I'm pretty sure this group last year covered all the answers, right? But I think most important for this particular poster board, if I recall last year when the groups walk around to note take, some of the answers were in the model that was drawn and labeled. So it's very important to not only include all the answers in your bullets, but also to label your 3D model. So let's go back to this again. Alright, so it says here, draw a 3D model that describes intermediate currents. and then use arrows once again. All the information is on page 531. I'm sorry, let me correct that. Page 523, and it's the first paragraph. And again, I'm going to walk around the room. If I see that you're having trouble, I will point out where the information is and kind of, give you some direction so that you can, score the maximum points on your poster board. Okay, so let me go to that page in my text. Bring it up to the camera so you can compare. Alright, so here's your 3D model. This is what you are going to draw. Again, if you notice, there's a column of water. And if you take a look at the very bottom one, it's called the North Atlantic Deep Water. There's a blue arrow showing you that particular current. It's cold because it's at the very bottom. Then in the middle is your Mediterranean Intermediate Water. Intermediate again, kind of meaning middle. And then you'll see surface water. So try your best to include all the labels, including, if you take a look at that arrow that's moving upwards into the atmosphere, it says evaporation. Make sure you include evaporation and make sure you include where it begins. It begins at the Mediterranean Sea. All this information is very important because later, when we walk around with our note-taking worksheets, you will need to get information from the model itself and from the poster. Okay, so I'm going to drop the textbook now so that you can see this model on the poster. All right, not too different. Again, I'm not looking for perfection, but all the information is present. You see the word evaporation. You'll see Mediterranean Sea. You'll see the label at the bottom. What's the label again? North Atlantic Deep Water. And then you'll see the orange arrow basically indicating the Mediterranean Intermediate. And then the label that says surface currents. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up as far as what has to be done. Hopefully you understood all the directions. I'm just going to kind of zoom out again so you can take notice on the table what you need to complete this assignment. You need a textbook, which of course I'm going to give you because I have them sitting in class. You need crayons, you need colored pencils, and you need a pencil to complete this assignment. I'm going to roughly estimate, like the last time, 3 days to get this done, but most students were done within a period and a half, maybe 2. So judge it again according to how some students move, and if the assignment's not completed in class, it becomes homework. Try not to take it home. The goal always when group work is assigned is to get it done in school. This way no one gets stuck taking the work home. Okay, lots of luck. Talk soon.